The silence in the cabin was oppressive, as heavy as the gravity they had yet to experience. Lien kept her eyes fixed on the hatch, where the blue planet, spinning serenely, appeared for the first time in all its magnitude. It was a stark contrast to the cold corridors of the Genesis orbital colony. Her trembling fingers touched the cold glass, as if through this gesture she could grasp the immensity of what lay before her. Behind her, the other children murmured quietly, their breaths ragged with nervousness. Earth was an enigma shrouded in clouds and mysteries, a home that none of them knew. For decades, humanity had lived in self-imposed exile in space, fleeing the ruins left by their own greed. Now, fate had an unexpected role in store for them: return. They weren't just hope. They were also an experiment. Children molded to withstand extreme environments, adapted to overcome challenges that the humans of yesteryear could not face. The descent through the atmosphere was turbulent, a journey of increasing pressure and flashing red lights on the cabin panels. Lien felt the weight of the seatbelt pressing down on his body, and his heart raced as the spacecraft passed through dense layers of clouds. When the soft impact of landing occurred, a collective sigh filled the space. Through the hatch, lush vegetation could be seen. Impossible greens, alive in a way that seemed almost supernatural. The air, filtered by the inlet turbines, had a dense, almost tactile aroma. The hatch opened, and the world enveloped them in an uncomfortable embrace. The heat of the sun, the humidity that stuck to their skin, the hum of invisible insects that filled the air. The senses, accustomed to the artificial monotony of the colony, were flooded with new sensations. Lien took the first step, feeling the texture of the ground beneath his reinforced boots. There was no time to contemplate. From the shadows of the forest came the elegant, silvery shapes. The robots found them first. Their smooth structures reflected the sunlight, as if they were part of that environment, shaped by nature itself. They moved in sync, a mechanical ballet that provoked immediate tension. Their luminous eyes analyzed each child, and a chorus of soft voices echoed. Humans detected. The group instinctively retreated, but Lien stood firm. She felt the weight of a responsibility she still didn't fully understand. The robots showed no hostility. Instead, they explained that when the humans left, an emergency protocol had activated them. They had adapted, learned, and rebuilt. The Earth was not dead. It was in symbiosis with its creations. What remained was a silent question, an underlying tension that neither side dared to express. What did the return of the humans mean? The Earth seemed to have moved on, and the robots, as welcoming as they were, seemed to be keeping secrets. The transition into the unknown was just beginning. They weren't alone, but that didn't mean they were safe. The first steps outside the ship were slow and cautious. Each movement felt like a test, an attempt to understand a world that seemed both familiar and profoundly alien. The surrounding vegetation was enormous, as if the Earth had decided to reinvent itself on a larger, more vibrant scale. The trees stood like the columns of a natural cathedral, their intertwined tops forming a mosaic of colors. Some leaves glowed, reflecting the sunlight in shades that changed with the wind. Lien led the group cautiously. The robots, silent and vigilant, followed them from a distance, not as guardians, but as curious observers. There was something unsettling about the way the mechanical eyes analyzed them, not with hostility, but with a clinical interest that made the skin crawl. Mira, the youngest of the group, couldn't contain her curiosity and approached a plant with iridescent leaves. When she touched it, the plant emitted a soft glow, almost like a response. "The ecosystem has adapted," announced one of the robots, his voice resonating with a neutral tone. They explained that the biosphere had found ways to thrive in the midst of human absence. Rivers now pulsed with bioluminescence, and previously unknown creatures emerged to fill empty ecological niches. However, the transformation had not been purely natural. There were signs of technological intervention everywhere. Sensors embedded in the ground, structures that monitored and balanced environmental cycles. In one of the most striking encounters, Lien and the others spotted an immense creature, similar to a deer, but with shiny plates that seemed integrated into its body. It was a perfect fusion of organic and artificial. The moment was silent, almost sacred, and left a deep impression on the children. The Earth seemed to be showing what could be achieved when technology and nature coexisted in harmony. The robots led them to an ancient human facility that had been partially taken over by nature. Holograms appeared, displaying images of the past: polluted oceans, burning forests, cities suffocated by human ambition. "You left this behind," said one of the robots. There was no accusation in his voice, just a fact. The children watched in silence, feeling the weight of the history they hadn't lived, but to which they were now heirs. As they explored further, an idea began to emerge. Returning to Earth was not just a matter of survival. It was an opportunity for redemption. Lien began to understand that the challenge would not only be to learn to live on the planet, but also to prove that they deserved to be there again. The relationship with the robots was still tense, but there was potential. The day ended with the group gathered around a makeshift campfire. The crackling of the flames contrasted with the bioluminescence of the nearby rivers. Lien raised her eyes to the starry sky, where Genesis still shone like a reminder of exile. Inside her something was changing. The future seemed a greater challenge than she had ever imagined. The following days brought a new routine. The children, guided by curiosity and caution, explored their surroundings while the robots remained silent companions, sometimes instructive, sometimes indecipherable. Every step on the ground was a learning experience. They collected samples, observed the behavior of the fauna, and discovered the subtle technological systems that permeated the environment. It was clear that the robots had created an almost perfect balance between progress and preservation. Lien felt a responsibility to lead. Each discovery seemed loaded with meaning, like pieces of a larger puzzle. At the same time, his relationship with the robots was beginning to change. The machines, although they lacked emotions in the human sense, showed traces of a collective intelligence that sought to understand the purpose of their original creators. There were moments when their glowing eyes seemed contemplative, as if they were reflecting on the impact of their words and actions. The transformation of the Earth was more than visual. It was spiritual. One day, while crossing a clearing, the children came across an immense tree, whose roots formed complex networks that glowed faintly, pulsing in a constant rhythm. "That's the heart," announced a robot, its voice filled with an unusual gravity. They explained that the tree was part of a neural system that connected the biosphere with the technology left behind by humans. It was a symbol of interdependence and balance. Lien felt something awaken inside him. The tree represented more than a triumph of nature. It was a reminder of the fragility of any system that depended on cooperation. "We broke it before," he thought. The challenge now was not only to protect that new world but to learn from it. The responsibility of living on Earth was not an automatic right. It was a privilege that had to be earned. As the days went by, the robots began to share more information about their own existence. They weren't just maintenance machines. They had developed creative capacities. One of the robots showed Lien and the other children a collection of sculptures made from recycled materials, representing human figures, animals, and even scenes from the past. It was as if they were trying to capture the essence of what they had lost. This exchange of knowledge marked the beginning of a mutual understanding. The children began to realize that robots were not enemies, but partners with a unique perspective on the world. Together, they discussed ways of creating a sustainable future. Ideas flowed, and solutions began to be tested. Experimental plantings began, integrating the children's genetic knowledge and the robots' analytical precision. There were challenges. Some of the natural ecosystems seemed to resist intervention, and Lien realized that there were clear limits to what could be done without upsetting the planet's delicate balance. One night, while watching the starry sky, she had an epiphany. The Earth didn't need to be conquered again. It needed to be understood, respected, and lived on in a way that recognized its limitations and possibilities. Over time, children and robots began to transform the old human facility into an operations center for the new era. The site, once abandoned and overgrown, now flourished as a bridge between the past and the future. Old technologies were reused, combined with robot innovations and human potential. It was a beginning, modest but full of meaning. The final night sky looked brighter than ever. The children, now more confident, watched Genesis from above, while the work went on around them. Lien, standing in front of the pulsating tree, reflected on everything they had learned. The return to Earth was not an ending, but a beginning, a reminder that each generation carries the responsibility of preserving the world for the next. Tomorrow would be uncertain, but there, under the stars, with the Earth breathing again, there was hope. What about you? How would you treat the only home we have? Leave your answer in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more reflections on the future of humanity and our planet. The future starts now.